Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We are going to focus in on a very different topic, something very interesting that was brought up to my attention from a viewer via email, and that is one of the after effects or resulting aftermath implications after experiencing narcissistic or psychopathic abuse. And that is essentially like a body dysmorphia or an issue with self-image. So especially the physicality, the experience of self-image, what we call our body, how we view ourselves, our physicality, and how that really is impacted or affected after experiencing narcissistic abuse. And I think it's very important to really understand that if you're suffering from a perfectionist standard of yourself, or you no longer look upon your body fondly, you look in the mirror and you just feel imperfect, you feel flawed, you feel that something is always lacking, wanting, and you can't quite measure up to certain high standards. Realize that this feeling or this exasperated, exhausted state is oftentimes related to the experience of being surrounded by narcissist or psychopathic abusers. And when I say abusers, I mean those who have held you to standards of supply. So those others who have created a set of guideposts outside of you for which you feel you constantly have to measure up. So that guidepost is existing outside of you, and it's not something that is held internally. It is not something that is felt or dictated or has a vision coming from one's internal standards or really one's internal realities. So really, one's internal state is to be unconditional love and to affect others with unconditional self-regard. It is until that innocence is taken, basically, what people might say as, you were robbed of your innocence as a way of describing it. So once has one kind of been removed from that innocence or held to very high standards, that one experiences this body dysmorphia or a feeling like they just don't measure up. They have self-image problems. And self-image problems can take many forms as an after effect in terms of anxiety, depression, never feeling good enough, feeling inferior. But it's a constantly feeling like you just aren't enough. You just don't look good enough. You don't feel good enough. You're not good enough to go out with others. You constantly feel self-critical. You have this big internal censor voice that's just saying, that's not good, that's not good, that's not good, let's change, let's change, let's change. As you can imagine, this is a very difficult sort of conveyor belt or sort of treadmill in life to get off of. And yes, everybody experiences some degree of that, but when it becomes really an issue, when it becomes dysfunctional, when it becomes crippling, when it becomes exasperating, when it absorbs an exorbitant amount of your day, then you are really dealing with body dysmorphia or self-image issues. And this especially as it relates to the expression of your physicality, how you feel as a woman, how you feel as a man. A lot of men have felt invalidated by a narcissistic mother. Perhaps they're made to feel like they have to idealize their mother and, always be like the mama's boy. So they always have to kind of feel that sort of, meekness. And they can't just own up to their masculinity side. They feel guilty for asserting themselves or being masculine, going on their own sort of, image, their own identity. They have a difficulty breaking away from that stereotype or that role model that their mother has created for them as the mama's boy. So they have a tough time kind of owning that masculinity. So we see it basically manifested in men when they have this self-image issue. In women, especially if they've been abused by narcissistic mothers, they have a difficult time owning their femininity, owning their softer side, expressing their sexuality without feeling like they're going to be victimized, hurt. They get into this feeling of when they express themselves in their femininity or their sexuality, they feel that they're so vulnerable, and that they can't really ever recover from unforeseen exposure to the uncertainties. So they tend to very perhaps downplay that side of themselves quite a bit. They're not comfortable dressing in a specific manner. They feel, and then it's the other side, though. Then we see oftentimes this flipping of extremes where someone goes from very conservative to very scantily clothed, or they don't know how to be appropriate. They have this internal temperature thermostat that goes way hot, way cold, and they just don't know how to regulate it. So oftentimes this is a mirroring issue with it's a external validation issue that we see people presenting with who have had narcissistic family, narcissistic spouse, or psychopathic abuse in their intimate relationships or close relationships, ongoing relationships. So if you have encountered this, I want to encourage you to let go the judgment. Let go the critical advisor. Let go that critical censor voice that is constantly telling you that you're not good enough. And it's very interesting also because I have a lot of people who respond and tell me that they have never done affirmations, that they're not very good at affirmations, that they don't know how to do this, that they haven't claimed their inner voice. And you must understand that there is an inner voice, there is an internal sort of censor or a guide, if you will. It's the I am. And so if that voice has been muffled, then you need to bring that out and consciously direct it. And if that requires work, if that requires effort, if there's a little bit of discomfort, if there's a little bit of newness, that's a sign that you're on the right path. Because there needs to be an emergence of a healthy inner voice. An inner voice really emanates from your self-belief. And then that self-belief then determines your thoughts, which then determines your behaviors and your emotions, how you feel. So it becomes this generating system, if you will. And the seed of that is in your self-belief. So if deep down you feel that you must measure up to someone else's standards, another individual, you are being directed by this one individual. And as you can imagine, if they are constantly moving target, if they are constantly raising the bar, they're basically rigging the system for you. So in essence, you can never win. It's like playing a slot machine. You're constantly trying to get those 777 according to the perfect alignment that this narcissistic individual has set these, higher than thou standards with which you feel you need to measure up to or acquiesce to or drive at a consensus to. And that this narcissistic abuser has implanted these basically in your operating system or how you relate socially to them. Realize that is always going to set you up for failure. It is always going to cause you to measure up, to be inferior. Because remember, a narcissist abuser or a psychopathic abuser constantly and has an insatiable, addicting need to be in the spotlight. They are not good at sharing. They do not like to share. They're going to scoff at others who, try to come close or who try to come at them with some sort of real or genuine energetic field. Because remember, the narcissist or psychopath are all about putting forth a mask. It's not a genuine sort of alignment between their body, mind, and spirit, which is connecting in an alignment and then is working for them in their life. The narcissist and the psychopath operate in a much different manner in which to present a mask to the world. A mask which is looking one way, which is talking one way, which is believing one way, which is feeling one way, but then they'll shut it off and then they have an internal world which is very different from that which you see in the outside world. So there's a real disconnect. And it's really, as life becomes, as people evolve and as people grow, this becomes more apparent. And this becomes more difficult to maintain. And then the rage to maintain that mask becomes more profound or more severe. So you see a real heightened sense of this, a more indelible, a more rigid mask, a more, firmly planted mask. And then, we see then, these family systems which grow to, keep that mask going, or to keep that persona going at all costs. And oftentimes this can create a sort of cycle of body dysmorphia where people do not evaluate their bodies effectively. They tend to hold harsh judgment of their physicality rather than having gratitude for everything that they're experiencing in life and that their body permits them to feel. They tend to be harshly judging of themselves. Then we get into the cutting behaviors, we get into the bulimia, we get into the anorexia, the sort of other compulsions that people are trying to direct their life so that they can achieve these unrealistic standards, and it becomes exasperating. It becomes exhausting. So realize that if you are experiencing this sort of anxiety as a result of psychopathic abuse, that you're not good enough, you'll never experience that state of perfection or that experience after being abused, realize that this is an aftershock. It's an aftermath of narcissistic or psychopathic abuse. And you need to take the helm. You need to take charge. You need to embrace yourself for who you are. And it's not just like, oh, I'm, embracing myself, but it's more really having gratitude for all that is working for your body, and to stop evaluating and stop being a harsh judge, because that is in control. That is coming from your sense of belief, your emotions, which you are then directing into your body, which fill your neuropsychology or your neural pathways. It's connecting your neuropsychology into your body, and then which is creating your emotional body and how you feel. So rather than beating yourself up and holding yourself to these unrealistic standards, learn to relax those a little bit. Learn to identify the voice of the internal censor and saying, okay, I understand this censor now is really the voice of the aftermath of this narcissistic perfectionist standard, who, for somebody who always wanted that spotlight, and who I'm constantly now to share, trying to get into a relationship, a consensual interdependent relationship with this person, but realizing that because the narcissistic addiction to being the one in power, to being the one in control, the one to setting the rules, how things play, but you can never learn the rules because the psychopath and narcissistic really, change up these at any time, whichever it is to serve them, realizing that that is their standards, and it has nothing to do with really truth, validity, and what is important for you, and let go of those unrealistic standards, and in turn, internalize a sense of okayness, releasing that harsh inner voice, letting that go, and allow yourself to relax into your body and say, you know what, I am good enough. I do have what it takes. I am okay. I don't need to go through these exasperating measures in order to be accepted, because now I accept myself, and that is all that matters. And once you do that, you'll find that others will be more attracted to you and be more accepting of you once you learn to be accepting of yourself. It's a very deep dynamic, and I applaud you. I'm so proud of you for hanging in there and working on these very intense issues as a result of identifying and healing beyond narcissistic and psychopathic abuse. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.